Welcome to Fox Soul's Black Report, your daily source for Black news, Black views, and Black opinions. Happy Hump Day. Today is Wednesday, May 11th, and I'm Mimi Brown.
I'm Romeo.
I'm Demi Lobo, and on today's report, the president says inflation is a top economic challenge, blaming inflation on the pandemic and the war in Ukraine. We break down how rising interest rates will affect Black consumers. Meanwhile, 2 Dallas police officers are under indictment for allegedly assaulting demonstrators. But did the attack have criminal intent? We have the story. Then, sheriff's deputies at Delaware State University are accused of racially profiling the university women's lacrosse team. The university's president has issued a statement.
Plus, Diddy wants to uncancel Travis Scott. And will Mike Tyson face criminal charges after his airplane beatdown last month? Soulmates, we have all of that and so much more. This is our voice and our truth, so let's get it.
We start today with developing news. President Joe Biden says he is working hard to respond to rising inflation across the country.
I want every American to know that I'm taking inflation very seriously, and it's my top domestic priority. The first cause of inflation is a once-in-a-century pandemic. But here's the good news. Because of the actions we've taken, America is in the stronger position to meet this challenge than just about any other country in the world.
The president calling inflation our top economic challenge and blaming it on the pandemic and the war in Ukraine. The president also pointing out the Federal Reserve raising interest rate is meant to slow inflation, but doing so will cause interest rates to rise for financial products like credit cards, student loans, mortgages, and car loans. There are also concerns about how rising interest rates will affect Black consumers already disproportionately impacted by low wages and unemployment. Congresswoman Maxine Waters says she is concerned the move to raise interest rates could cause a recession. We're doing stories every day now about rising gas prices, rising credit card interest rates, all those sorts of things. And I think, the writing is on the wall. And people think inflation is an equal opportunity offender, but it is not. Black people, Black communities will be hit harder by inflation. The saying goes something like when Black people get a cold, or when white people get a cold, Black people get pneumonia. And so if we look back at COVID and how hard it hit us then, it's going to be the same thing because of systemic racism. And not to mention, if you take a look back as a case study, the 2008 recession and how Black people were laid off more from work, their wages were cut more. We were the first to lose our homes and things like that. I just think that, we really need to pay attention to the warning signs and what they're saying every day.
Mimi, like most things in America, there is a disparity when it comes to the Black community, and we get the short end of the stick with a lot of different things. And so inflation right now is costing the average household about $300 per month. So that's the average household is spending an extra $300 a month. And so there's a poll that says 84% of Americans are cutting back on purchases. But the problem is that every single month it can go up and down, which is inflation. So a lot of analysts are saying that although Biden, like we said in the story here, that he's saying with words that he's making inflation a top priority, analysts are saying he's actually making it worse because he's not making difficult choices. There's 3 difficult choices that analysts are saying that President Biden needs to act on immediately, which are the spending spree, the $1.9 trillion American Rescue Plan, reversing inflation-causing policies, and then clearing up the shipping backlog at our ports. And so if Joe Biden can't make those difficult decisions, really him saying that it's a top priority is not going to change anything if he's not putting the action toward.
I agree with that. And look, this could play into the Republicans' favor as we get close to the midterms, right? Inflation, not think it's going anywhere anytime soon. Summertime gas prices are probably going to shoot back up. So I say all this, people sit back here in America and say, you can do a lot for people around the world, other countries. You can cut that check. How are you going to get us out of this situation? Maybe another stimulus check, maybe another pay rate for the gas. There's something you can do, but I promise you, if inflation and all that's still high, Republicans will use it against the Democrats.
Absolutely, Romeo. An excellent point. Pro-choice groups, they plan to take to the streets in a dozen of U.S. cities this Saturday. Planned Parenthood, MoveOn.org, and the Women's March are all sponsoring the rallies. Now, they're calling it the Bans Off Our Our Bodies rally. It's scheduled to take place this Saturday in several cities, including New York, Chicago, Los Angeles, and Austin. Now, the Supreme Court's draft opinion that could overturn Roe versus Wade has encouraged many people who care about a woman's right to choose to organize in an attempt to protect that right. If Roe is in fact overturned, low-income Black and Latino people will be disproportionately impacted by a lack of access to safe abortion.
A new report from the CDC revealing some startling statistics. The agency released a vital signs report that shows firearm homicides rates grew nearly 35% between 2019 and 2020. That marks the highest gun-related homicide rate in 25 years. The CDC found guns were involved in 79% of all homicides and more than half of all suicides in 2020. And gun deaths for Black men increased 39% from 2019 to 2020. Native American communities also saw a large increase in firearm deaths during the same period. The CDC says economical, physical, and social conditions during the pandemic contributed to the risk of violence and suicide.
And Vice President Kamala Harris breaking a tie to help another Black woman make history. The VP's tie-breaking vote allowed the Senate to confirm economist Lisa Cook by a vote of 51 to 50 last night. Cook will now serve on the Federal Reserve Board of Governors. She's the first Black woman to sit on the panel in its 108-year history. She joins the Feds at a tough time. The central bank is trying to rein in inflation, and Cook was recently a professor of economics of international relations at Michigan State University.
Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot is pledging a $500,000 increase for abortion access. The pledge comes as Lightfoot declared the Windy City will be an oasis for women seeking the procedure if Roe versus Wade is struck down by the Supreme Court.
As long as I am mayor, the city of Chicago will continue to take comprehensive approach to reproductive justice, and I want to emphasize justice, to ensure equitable access that eliminates barriers with deep racist roots in our country.
The new funding is expected to provide lodging, transportation, food, and other expenses for women with neighboring states who travel to Chicago to have an abortion.
It has many names. Pot, weed, Mary Jane, and marijuana is most commonly used name. But Washington state lawmakers passed a law that changes every code in the state to say cannabis instead of marijuana. Bill supporters say marijuana has a racist connotation, even though it is a Mexican Spanish word dating back to the mid-1800s. Supporters say the word was used as a pejorative by white law enforcement officials. Federal officials at the time said weed was used by African Americans, Mexican, and Caribbean people. Government officials at the time demonized those users of the drug in an attempt to keep white people from using weed.
And a bill that would have protected people from discrimination in Louisiana based on their hairstyle failed to make it through the state legislature this week. The bill, modeled after the Crown Act, failed by a vote of 6 to 8 in the State House committee. The Louisiana bill would have protected African-American students and workers from being fired or discriminated against because of their hair. So far, 15 states and 40 cities have enacted a version of the Crown Act. Last month, the U.S. House of Representatives passed a federal version of the act.
The United States is charging a third suspect in connection to the assassination of Haitian President Jovenel Moïse. Ex-Haitian Senator John Joel Joseph has been charged with conspiring to commit murder or kidnapping. Now, he was arrested in Jamaica back in January, but was extradited to the U.S. last week. Moïse was killed last July by gunmen who stormed the presidential palace in Port-au-Prince. Haitian investigators say a group of foreign mercenaries entered the president's home and killed him.
Former President Donald Trump could return to Twitter. That's the word from billionaire Elon Musk.
And then I think Twitter needs to be much more even-handed. It currently has a strong left bias because it's based in San Francisco. I don't think the people there necessarily intend, or at least perhaps some of them don't intend to have a left bias. They just, from their perspective, it seems moderate, but they're just coming at it from an environment that is very far left.
Musk is in the process of buying the social media platform. Mr. Trump was permanently banned from Twitter after last year's attack on the U.S. Capitol. Musk says he supports free speech. However, former President Trump says if his Twitter ban is lifted, he will not return. He plans instead to use his own social media platform, Truth Social. Trump was kicked off Twitter, Facebook, and YouTube the day after the January 6th insurrection. Why even open up Pandora's box? I mean, here's a guy that already has issue with his employees when it comes to the world of Tesla, right, and the plants, right? So we're already kind of looking at him side eye. Now, if you're okaying this, if this man, I'm speaking about Trump, has moved on and say he has his own platform, even though not having success with it, why would you give him the opportunity to come back, especially leading up to the midterms and 2024 election?
Yeah, and why would you want, if he already is, Trump is saying that he doesn't want to really come back to Twitter, he wants to go to Truth Social. What is the point of even having him back? There's a statistic that said 21% more people signed up for Twitter when Trump left. And so if we're talking about dollars here, I know it's social media, it's a free app, but if we're talking about dollars, which Elon Musk seems like a gentleman who cares about money, 21% more people signed up, so I think that you should take that into consideration. And also, not to mention, bringing Trump back lets so many Americans who are on Twitter, lets them pretty much say that you agree with everything that Trump did and you're okay with it.
I believe that Trump wants to come back to Twitter. I don't believe that Truth Social app, it didn't go anywhere, and they're still trying to figure it out. I definitely believe he wants to go back on Twitter. In fact, we just did a story the other day where a judge was still upholding the ban. So I don't know how that would work. But, you know, the main thing is I think a lot of people saw the writing on the wall with this, because when we first did this story, the NAACP came out and they urged Elon not to allow Trump back on Twitter. I think Sean King made an entire post about how this would just ruin, ruin it for Black Twitter, just because our voice would then be silenced. And so this will have repercussions. I'm all for free speech, but what Donald Trump is doing is hate speech, and there's a difference. And I think that we need to make that clear, that there's a difference between free and hate speech.
He spreads lies, misinformation, disinformation. I mean, he's just a harmful person to be on Twitter.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, former New York Mayor Bill de Blasio is being sued by 4 former NYPD chiefs who say the ex-mayor forced them out because they were white. The former officers say de Blasio and his wife Shirlane, who is Black, pushed them out to take early retirement so Black cops could take their place. The New York Daily News says the move to force the chiefs out came after the retirement of a Latino police executive. The lawsuit alleges Chief Carlos Gomez leaving the department would be disruptive because of the executive to the demographics. No word, though, on de Blasio or his wife from the lawsuit.
And in Oklahoma, 2 former cops are facing first-degree manslaughter charges in the death of an unarmed Black man in December. Now, this is body camera footage of the shooting. Officers Nathan Ronan and Robert Hinkle, they were fired from the Lawton Police Department when they killed 29-year-old Quadri Sanders. Lawton cops were called about a man in violation of a protective order and possession of a firearm. Now, investigators say officers told Sanders to exit the home. He eventually walked out of the front door, and Sanders can be seen with his hands in the air holding a baseball cap. But Officer Hinkle fired on him, sending him to the ground. Sanders, who was on the ground, puts his hands up again, and that's when Ronan fires at him. Sanders died on his way to the hospital.
Jacob Blake is dropping his federal civil rights lawsuit against the Wisconsin police officer who shot him leaving him paralyzed back in 2020. Blake's shooting sparked protests in Kenosha. Blake sued Rustin Shiki, who's not exactly known why the suit was dropped. Prosecutors cleared Shiki of any criminal wrongdoing. The demonstration sparked by Blake's shooting also led to the Kyle Rittenhouse shooting, which led to the deaths of 2 white protesters.
And 2 Dallas police officers are under indictment for allegedly assaulting demonstrators during the George Floyd protests. Senior Dallas officer Ryan Mabry and former Dallas cop Melvin Williams were indicted last week by a grand jury. Mabry faces 8 indictments, including 6 for aggravated assault by a public servant when he and Williams fired non-lethal ammunition into the crowd. A jury must determine if the officers had criminal intent when they injured protesters. Dallas police officers say the men were doing their job during a chaotic time. Mabry is still with the force, while Williams was fired for misconduct.
A Georgia sheriff is facing sexual battery charges. Now, he's accused of groping famous TV court judge Glenda Hatchett. A former DeKalb County sheriff says he witnessed Chris Coody touch Judge Hatchett during a sheriff's convention in Atlanta earlier this year. Sheriff Thomas Brown says he intervened when he saw what happened and helped remove the judge from the area. Now, witnesses say it happened as Coody was describing what part of Georgia he was from. He reportedly moved his hands to the judge's breast area and touched her. A local Atlanta TV station says Coody is currently out of the country on a trip.
Members of the Delaware State University women's lacrosse team claim they experienced racial profiling in Georgia last month at the hands of Liberty County Sheriff's deputies. Students were recorded as deputies boarded their bus on the way back from a tournament and accused them of having drugs.
I will tell you guys, the reason why I'm coming on the bus right now is to tell y'all, look, we're gonna check y'all's luggage, okay? If there is anything in y'all's luggage, we're probably gonna find it. Okay, I'm not looking for a little bit of marijuana, but I'm pretty sure you guys as chaperones probably going to be disappointed in you if we find any. You guys are on a lacrosse team, correct? So if there is something in there that is questionable, please tell me now, because if we find it, guess what? We're not going to be able to help you.
One of the players on the bus says deputies pulled over the bus for a traffic violation. She says shortly after deputies began searching the team's bags using police canines and additional units, the university president released a statement saying nothing illegal was discovered in the search and the school is exploring options for recourse, legal and otherwise. The driver of the bus was never issued a ticket. The sheriff's office has not offered comment on what happened, but says the incident is under investigation. When I heard this, you hear that they lay it all out for you. They claim that the windows were tinted, so they did not know there was black women on the bus and all that. But you hear the way he's speaking to the women. To me, it's so disrespectful how he's even coming in. He's coming in hot. And then we're hearing how he went through their luggage and through their clothes and kind of like just put all that out there. Wasn't a good look. Some are going to say that they did the right thing because it kind of falls within the Fourth Amendment, but still the way I think he spoke to them and handled it, I don't like it.
Yeah, this was a clear case of racial profiling. You can't tell me that they didn't look in that bus or they didn't see from the side that these were black, actually children, right? They were college-age students who were, on their way back from a lacrosse game, and then like all these things, how they start traffic violations. So we pulled over the bus driver because of a traffic violation, but he never got a ticket. So what does that say? You were just, sniffing for something. And you're right, Romeo, the way that they were talking to these children. At the end of the day, they're athletes. Yeah. So to assume that they had some sort of drug paraphernalia or marijuana on them is just very presumptuous of you. As you came in hot, you were looking for something, and you saw a bunch of black people, and you assumed that they were either drugs or guns or just something on this bus, and you searched it. You brought canine units. I mean, you came in hot. You came in ready. And I am so glad that the president of the Delaware State is going to continue and make sure that he gets to the bottom of this, because this should definitely be investigated.
Wow. Mimi, I don't even you just blew me away because you wrapped it all up beautifully. Every single fact. And I just want to just add one more piece on, because you covered everything perfectly, is that there are still states and cities in America that do not want to see black people. And this seems like you said exactly what was happening here. They didn't want to see us here. Racial profiling, everything Mimi said, absolutely correct.
To the T. All right. Well, an investigation is underway to find out who placed a noose near a dormitory in Stanford University. School officials say the noose was made from a rope at a tree that was once used in a campus event a few years ago. There have been other instances of nooses found on the campus. Some were discovered in 2019. School officials say they will not tolerate anti-black racism at the university.